Hi all, so interesting topic. I've recently been doing some digging about what external factors can have a real positive impact in terms of property prices. So if you buy something and don't do anything to it, what potentially could assist in terms of creating some more value for you? A lot of this stemmed from looking at some options in London and doing a bit of research, but in theory this practice works for the whole of the UK. And it all started when I read an article about the Gales effect. Now, Gales Bakery, super high end, it's madness. You go in, you spend £4 on a coffee, £10 on a croissant or whatever it is. I don't know how people can afford to eat there, but there was sort of an article that came out about the thinking that if a Gales goes into a certain area, that the value of the properties in that area is going to increase X amount over a period of time, which has actually been, they did some research on it, and actually that's not the case at all. In many cases, actually, it's been the opposite, and prices have dropped slightly. But there are actually shops and retail places that do increase value. And it was interesting to look at some of these. So, for example, one coffee shop that does drive value in locations is Starbucks, which can currently drive value as much as £15,000 worth of value into a property. Now, that's not quite as impressive as Waitrose. So, unsurprisingly, Waitrose are a posher, higher end supermarket. And that, according to Lloyd's, if you live near a Waitrose, can add almost £40,000 worth of value to your home. So that's basically 10% higher than your average sort of house prices. The study that they put out has shown, which is pretty impressive. But then if we look at other supermarkets, you're looking at like Asda, Lidl, Aldi, they do add value, slightly less, between sort of 5,000, 3,000 and 1,000 respectively. But again, there is value there. So being close to those bigger supermarkets is definitely a good thing. And then looking at the high street, you know, if you have a fancy Carluccio's or a Prezzo or something along those lines, apparently those type of places can really add value to a property. So it is worth looking at that wider picture, and something we often do for clients is seeing what else is in the local area. And you know, if you had a Michelin star restaurant on your doorstep, now I appreciate this isn't going to be everywhere across the UK, but that can add up to 50% of the value according to a prime location survey. So you know, looking at these options and how potentially you can have value within or push value without not doing an awful lot. So what we often do is say to people, investors, if you're going in and there's a high street there and there might be empty spaces, it might be worth looking at the planning or seeing if any of these shops are going into the local area, because it can quite quickly drive value without you having to do an awful lot. However, not all restaurants or eateries are as good for homeowners. So being within a walking distance of a McDonald's, while maybe amazing when you're hungover, saw prices drop by up to 24% compared to other homes in the area. So yeah, it's interesting to look at sort of what the narrative is around different shops, different places that potentially could add value to you. Now one thing that I did find really interesting and sort of doing a bit of research on this topic is it's actually living around a church can be a real big plus. So a study by an economics research centre found that the further away homes get from church steeples, the more affordable they become. So for every 1 kilometre of distance away from the church, prices fell by 4.2%. Now they reckon this data is on the fact that a church is the centre, or used to be the centre of the town. So a lot of the shops and everything around that sort of often close to that positioning. So that obviously the further away from that, the further you're going to get from the other convenience and everything like that. But it's nice to see and nice to have a look at that there is still, obviously, while attendance of churches may be down, there is still obviously a want and a desire, and whether it's financial or for other reasons, that being around those locations is definitely seen as a plus when it comes to property.